So in this section, we're going to shift gears a little bit. Everything that we've been doing for the last few weeks involved a right triangle. So we could use Pythagorean theorem, we could use trig functions, all that kind of stuff. But the reality is that's a very specific area. Okay, when we're talking about triangles that are only right triangles. Most of the time in our world, we're going to encounter triangles that are not right triangles. And we still are going to need to be able to solve those triangles. And since they aren't right triangles, we have to come up with some new tools. We have to learn some new tools and new strategies to do that. Okay? So most of the time now moving forward, the triangles that we're going to be looking at are not going to be right triangles, which means Pythagorean theorem doesn't apply. There is no opposite adjacent hypotenuse. That just doesn't apply unless we have a right triangle. And we're going to move away from that now. Okay? So we're going to learn about the law of sines today. And for those of you guys who have been working ahead in Sarah, you've probably looked at law of sines a little bit. But here's what it is. First off, it's a very powerful tool because it allows us to find missing sides or missing angles of any triangle, not just the only thing we've been doing before was right triangles. Now we're going to be able to find missing sides and angles of any triangle, and that's why this is really important. So one of the things you're going to hear me talk about a lot is this phrase. We need an opposite side angle combination. So we're really going to look for something like that as we work through these problems, and when we can find that opposite side angle combination, then it's going to be easy to use law of sines to solve. So this is what I'm talking about. You're going to match up an angle of a triangle with its opposite side. Okay? And that's where we're going to get law of sines from. A series of matching the opposite side and angles up together. And for our purposes, we're going to name our angles capital A, capital B, and capital C. And then the opposite sides are just the lower cases of those letters, which is what I'm about to put on the screen. Okay, so there's a lot there. I know you got to catch up. But all this is saying is we're going to match up sine of the angle, and we're going to put it over its opposite side. Sine of another angle over its opposite side, and sine of the third angle over its opposite side. Now you may see this in other places with the sides on top and the sine of the angle on the bottom. So long as you're consistent, it doesn't matter. They're the same thing. Okay. Okay, so here's an example of a picture just in case we are unclear about the whole opposite side angle thing. Okay, if I have this being angle A, the opposite side is lowercase a. For angle B, the opposite side is lowercase b, and for angle C, lowercase c is its opposite side. We tend to label triangles in that fashion, whether they are ABC or DEF or HIJ, whatever the letters are that get used. The opposite side typically is the lowercase and the angle is the uppercase. Obviously, triangles can come in lots of different shapes and sizes. This is just one example, and the reason I showed you this has to do more with that whole opposite side angle thing than anything else, okay? Because that's going to come into play quite a bit here in a minute. So, let's look at a problem that you're going to be doing, problems like you're going to be doing, and we'll work through it and walk through it and show you how to do it. If you don't already have your calculator out, you want to get that out.
Which one?
Okay, here's the problem that we're going to be looking at. You can take a picture of this and put that in your notes, and then we'll work through it. So the key to solving this triangle, for solving for C, is first finding that opposite side angle combination where we know both measures, and that's what this is saying. We have to find and look for a situation where I have the angle and I know its measure, and the side opposite it and I know its measure. Once we do that, the rest of this problem gets really easy. We have to find that first and make sure that exists, because if it doesn't exist, we're not going to be able to use law of sines. So that's the first question. Does it exist? Is there an angle and its opposite side where we know both measures?
Yes.
Which ones?
77,
77, and 15. Okay, so I have that, and I know here I have it as side BC, which it is side BC, but we should probably stay consistent and call it A. Okay, because that is side A, and it matches up with angle A. I have a side angle combination where I know both measures. That's the key to having any success here. Okay. Just so you know, the next slide, it's going to switch back from lowercase a to BC. You can keep changing it if you want to, but I'm not going to change all those slides every time. So here's the next step. Okay, our next step is just understanding that finding that side angle pair is critical. It's the most important thing. You have to look for it. You have to find where both of those measures are known, because that's going to allow us to set up one of the ratios for law of sines. So, essentially, that's what we need to do next, is we start with that ratio. So that just ends up being sine of 77 over 15. That's where I start. Once I have that first ratio set up, the rest of it gets pretty easy. Since I'm looking for side C, do I know the angle that goes with side C, that's opposite side C? Yeah, that angle's right here, 23 degrees. I know that. So the next part is to plug in the other side angle that I'm looking for, okay? And plug in what we know. We know that angle C is 23 degrees, and we're looking for side C. So on the bottom of the second ratio, there's going to be the missing side. And then on top, it's just going to say sine of 23. So that's the next step, okay? So once I have that second ratio set up, the reality is the only thing that's missing is C. It's just a proportion. Yeah. Sine of 77 is a value. Sine 23 has a value. Okay, and the last thing you need to do is solve the proportion. Now, before you do that, I want to talk about how to do that. Even though I know you know how to solve a proportion, I'm going to do it all in one step. Instead of cross multiplying twice and then dividing both sides, I'm going to do it all at once.
Are you going to do it on this slide?
Yep. Okay, so 15 and sine of 23 get multiplied together, because those are the two that I know, right? Bless you. And then what I end up doing is dividing by the other value that's opposite kitty corner from the value I'm looking for. Okay, so my equation essentially to solve for C is going to be 15 sine of 23 divided by sine of 77. Okay? Now, here's the thing. Okay, I want to really emphasize something here. I want to emphasize this parenthesis. Okay? When you type that in your calculator, you have to be sure to close the 23. And here's why. If you don't, if you leave this parenthesis out, and this all slides inside, the calculator will find the sine of 23 divided by sine of 77. So if you don't close it, what will happen is the calculator thinks you're doing this. And that will give you an entirely different answer and a wrong answer. So make sure that you close the parenthesis after the first degree, so that this whole thing on the back half doesn't slide under. If you want to write it 15 sine 23 over sine 77 and enter it in like a fraction, you can do that too. Okay? And those of you who've gotten good with your graphing calculator at entering it as a fraction, that would look like this. If you want to enter it in your calculator that way and guarantee that that sine 77 can't slip inside there, you're welcome to do that too. Either one of those is fine, but you got to pick one, okay? So go ahead and plug that in if you haven't already and see what you get. All right, what did you get?
6.015.
Round to the nearest hundredth. Okay, so you should have 6.02 units, okay? Now, I'm gonna go through some other things with you here in a second on this example, just to be clear about how you tackle some of the problems that you're gonna see. Okay, in some of the problems, let's say, for example, that this 77 wasn't there. Okay. And however, they told us that this angle was 80 degrees. And let me explain why I'm showing you this example. Okay? Because if we started this problem all over again and said, all right, find side C, the problem here is I don't have an opposite side angle combination where I know both measures, right? I don't know what this value is over here for this side. I know its angle, but I don't know this side. The only side I have is 15. So before you just say, well, can't do it, doesn't work, what could I do here? Add the angles, subtract from 180, and that gives me what? Right. So that would give me this angle. So if you're in a situation like that I just showed you, and you feel like there's not a side angle combination that you know, ask yourself, have I found all the angles? Because we can do that really easily. All right. The other thing that you're going to be asked to do in your homework today is actually solve the triangle. So even if we weren't given this angle there, and it said solve the rest of the triangle, what we could do is then find that third angle, and then now I'm looking for side B. So I would start this problem over again, and instead of it, the sine 77 over 15 would be the same, but instead of it being 23, this would be an 80, this would be B, and I'd solve that proportion again for that, or solve that new proportion to find side B. So the process of actually solving the entire triangle is not much different than what we did. You just have to keep going, okay? And that's going to happen in your homework tonight. All right, next one I want you to do on your own. Do this problem on your own. Go. Again, I got to find that side angle combination where I know both. All right, that's sine of 35 over 7. So the other ratio is going to be what? Okay. And 105 over C. Cross multiply and divide. Now, two things I want to tell you in your homework. You need to write the proportion down, and then you need to write the work. Okay? So if you write it this way or if you write it as a fraction, either way you got to write something down. Okay? Don't just go from here to your calculator without writing this down so I can see what you're doing. All right. What's the answer? Okay, 11.79 units, good. All right. If I needed to solve this triangle, the next thing I would do is find angle A, which is how much? 40. And then set it up again and go sine of 40 over A, and I'd find that side, piece of cake. Okay? Any questions?